Okay.
I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions, and yet, when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better. That this cruelty too shall end, that peace and tranquility will return once more. Written by Anne Frank in her book, The Diary of a Young Girl, 1947. Those were some deep thoughts, big words written by a very young girl who was going through tragedy, horrifying things. She was being persecuted for who she was as a person, who she was born as. The life of Anne Frank was a life full of hope, a life that even today still inspires us. I began learning about Anne Frank through my education, and recently have done a lot more research on it. Let me begin by telling you a little bit about Anne Frank. She was born Annalise Marie Frank, June 12, 1929. Her parents are Otto and Edith, and she had a sister named Margot. They lived in Frankfurt until she was 5 years old, and at that time, that's when Otto moved the family to Amsterdam. They tried several times during this point in her life to immigrate to the U.S. or Britain, but were denied both times. The time that Anne lived in was a time full of restrictions placed on Jewish people, and so the Frank family was eventually forced to go into hiding. There were several anti-Jew laws going on at this time. At the time, the Jews could no longer own their own businesses. That was around the time that Otto Frank moved his family to Amsterdam. So Anne lived there. Once they moved their business, they couldn't ride their bicycles. They had to be registered. They were wearing yellow stars, going to their own schools. And eventually, Margot's papers were called on her to go to work camp. And she had to hide. That's when they began to go into hiding. Anne spent 2 years at this time writing in her diary with the hopes of being a published writer, but did not ever live to see her dreams come true. When Anne was 13 on her birthday, she received the diary that we all know as the Diary of Anne Frank, the published diary. According to the Anne Frank House website, created and last updated in 2010, Anne Frank was given her diary at 13, and she spent the time that they were hiding in the annex writing. It was her escape. It was the only form where she could get away from the people she was stuck with. During this time, there was another family, the Van Pels, and she had a young romance with Peter Van Pelt, who was the only other one there with her, only other young person. So this was a rough time for her. She was a girl growing up inside of one apartment hidden in the back of the building. So during this time, Anne's dream was to grow up and become a published author. She wanted to be a journalist, write novels. She had many hopes and dreams. Anne Frank died in a German death camp, but her dreams were fulfilled when her father published her diary, bringing insight and inspiration to us even today. The family was eventually discovered. They were sent to a work camp first, and later sent to a death camp where Anne and her sister died of typhus. After the liberation of the Jews, Anne's father went back and found her diary that the family that was helping them hide had found, and he published it. To this day, I mean, we are impacted by her life and how inspiring it was, all the things that she faced. She is taught about in schools. There's been plays made about her, films. Her book has been translated into 65 languages. To end this, I'm going to end it with a quote from her. I don't want to have lived in vain like most people. I want to be useful or bring enjoyment to all people, even those I've never met. I want to go on living even after my death. The Diary of Anne Frank, written by Anne Frank and published in 1947. I think we can all agree that the life and legacy of Anne Frank was never lived in vain, and that although she didn't grow to see the impact she would have on society, we all know about her today. And she's an inspiration to us all.